All right, welcome to Level Up Academy Audio Room. This is the first 10 series about higher education. However, some of these things that I'm putting for academics and study habits can be really good for business owners, especially entrepreneurs. I have a lot of veteran students who are retired and then now they want to be an entrepreneur and start a business. So I'm going to kind of amalgamation both student habits, professional development, and business owner because I want to support my business owner friends. So that's what we're going to be talking about. So today's first episode is going to be introducing effective study habits and laying the foundation for success with essential study techniques. So the first one that I want to talk about, there's 10. Usually I'll do 10. The first one is set your clear goals. Define specific, achievable goals for each study session or subject. Having a clear direction helps you stay focused and motivated. How many of you guys have heard of SMART goals? Raise your hand or give me an emoji. Give me an emoji if you know what a SMART goal is. SMART goals. Have any idea what a SMART goals are? I teach this all the time and I'll know a lot of people, I'm sure Dr. Z would know what it is. So I'm going to define it for those of us who don't know what a SMART goal is. SMART is a mnemonic, okay? It's basically stands for S, is very specific. Specific means clearly define what you want to achieve. Make your goal detailed and precise because you're going to waste time if you go over in circle. Avoid any vague or general statements, okay? M starts for measurable. You need to set criteria to measure your progress and determine when you've achieved the goal. Include something that is quantifiable indicators of your success, some type of numbers, right? And then A is achievable. Make sure that when you're setting a goal, it is realistic and it is attainable. Otherwise, you're setting yourself up for failure. It should challenge you, but not be so overwhelming that it's impossible to reach, okay? R stands for relevant. Your goal should be aligned with your broader objectives and relevant to your aspirations, whatever you aspire to be and do. Make sure it's meaningful and worth your time and effort because there are projects out there you're like, I don't even know why I started this. This is overwhelming, right? It's not even relevant to what I'm trying to do or accomplish. So make sure that what you're doing is relevant because when you're tired, like 50 inspirational connections, there's so much behind the scenes that you don't see, even beyond the video that you see for our feature tomorrow. There's so many matrix that I have to do. But because I love doing it and I love elevating my community, it's relevant to my mission. I do not mind doing it at all. In fact, it inspires me, right? Because it's relevant. Now, the last thing for SMART goal is T, which is time bound. Make sure that you set a specific time frame or deadline for achieving your goal, because this will add a sense of urgency and also helps you to stay focused. You guys ask me, how do you do so many things all at once? I use SMART goals. I write it down. I'm very specific on what I want to achieve. Sometimes though, okay, you have a specific idea of your goal, but then once you're in that project, it takes a whole lot of new things. Like Nicole and I's 50 Inspirational Connection, I had an idea in my head. I thought about it for 2 hours. I laid out the foundation. I had and I literally just invited Nicole to say, hey, do you want to be on a project? And she didn't know what it was. And she's like, sure. And now she knows what it is. But at the end of the day, it's a lot of work. However, it is so important to build community, right? If you are a worker, an employee, sometimes it's better to talk to strangers about your issues at work without naming your work or anything like that, because it helps you gain clarity from other people, right? Giving examples. But at the same time, if you are not having a community that helps you, it just kind of falters down and you're like, oh my God, I feel so overwhelmed. That's another thing that you want to talk about. So SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and of course, time bound. Now, that's the first one, okay, for study habits is setting a clear goal. The second one is create a schedule. Develop a consistent study schedule or a habit that you would want to include a designated time slot for each of this subject. Stick to this routine to build a productive study habit or work habit. How many of you are entrepreneurs starting to start a business and you're like, oh my gosh, there's so much to do. I can't. My brain is, because your brain is bouncing every single where. You don't know where to start, what's going on, what's happening. And then whatever that stimulates you for that moment, that's when you focus your goals. And then at the end of the day, you're going in circles and you're like, why am I so tired? But I feel like I didn't accomplish anything because you didn't create a schedule. Okay. Make sure that when you have your goal, you have a goal. Like for example, for me, I have a goal to lecture for an hour, go to my audio room, have a meeting in between, and then lecture again, right? If I didn't have a SMART goal, I'd be like, I know I have to do something. Let me see where am I going that. I say, if you're not in my calendar, you don't exist. Nothing against anybody. I love you guys. But if you are not on my calendar and you're not on my schedule, you don't exist. However, I do set only 3 big goals a day on my schedule. Big goals I need to accomplish. The rest of the goals, the rest of the meetings, I have to put fires business when you own your own business. It can still fit in your schedule. But make sure that all those 3 big goals that you need to accomplish today, you have a time slot for that period. And whatever stimulation, whatever things that can wait and no one's going to die, do it afterwards so that you can accomplish. Because our brain can feel that you're accomplishing something when you have accomplished something. So don't go all over the place. Just stick one thing at a time and then make sure you have time for that. The third effective habits that I want to tell you, whether you're a student, professional, or an entrepreneur, is organize your space. Okay? Create a clutter-free. I am cluttered everywhere right now. However, sometimes chaos is something good for my brain. Don't ask me why, but sometimes it is like that. But you need all your necessary materials and resources available to you. In front of me right now, I challenge you guys, what is in front of you other than listening to me right now? You probably have your phone. You probably have a pen and a paper to take notes or whatnot. And you have a computer maybe in front of you as well. And then you probably have an iPad and a coffee cup next to you, right? Those are like most of us. Now, for me, I have those. I have my roadcaster. I have my camera. I have a mirror. I have my lipstick. I mean, all my makeup tools is in front of me. Okay, that's my clutter, I'm saying. But for you, for any type of effective habits, you need to organize your space because you need to make sure that what you see, you know how like, don't be seen but only be heard, or all those sayings like if you don't see it, then you can't, it doesn't exist, right? I just said that. If you're not on my calendar, you don't exist. It's the same concept, except in your space. What you need, the tools that you need right now should be on your space. Now, if you like to work out in the middle, in between of your whatever, it's fine because in the back of me, I have my yoga mat because sometimes my back hurts sitting down. I actually have a 3 office now. Don't ask me why. But my second one is standing up. But when I'm podcasting, I'm sitting down. But I have my yoga mat. I have my stretch for my hand because I have a back problem also. So I have those little sticky bands that I use, right? Because I need those. Those are the tools that keeps me going. So that's the third one, okay? Create a clutter-free if you can, but organize your environment. The fourth one is active learning techniques. Let me repeat that. Active learning techniques. That means you engage actively with the material that you are trying to do by summarizing it, paraphrasing it, and teaching it to someone else. This actually helps you enhance your understanding and retention. Okay, you're like, CJ, what are you talking about? When you are in school, or when you are an entrepreneur, or when you are a podcaster, a live streamer, a content creator, you have a material in front of you. Sometimes it's so overwhelming with the projects that you're doing. You're like, I can't. My brain just can't. So what you do is chew on it for a bit and said, what am I trying to accomplish? What am I trying to do? What is my outcome? You have to reverse engineer everything. When you feel overwhelmed, reverse engineer, go backwards. Summarize, paraphrase, what are you trying to do? Then have a buddy, have a friend, have a group that you have, a small group like what we have with the creatives group. Is what we do is we said, hey guys, let's bounce ideas. What are these thoughts? These are my writing thoughts. Susanna is really great at bouncing her ideas. And so is Nicole. Like, hey, I'm working on this project. What are you guys' thoughts? Because it needs to come out of your head. Now, if your outcome doesn't feel like someone is getting it, then that means don't take it personally. That means that you need to go to the board, to the drawing board and say, okay, I need to do it something else. In order for you to learn something, you need to ask feedback, right? You might be the greatest person on whatever superpower you have, but we all need feedback to grow. So in order for you to do that, bounce ideas with someone. This actually enhances your understanding and retention of whatever material that you have. Now let's segue a little bit and talk about brain retention. How do you retain so much in your brain? I asked that myself too, believe me. Things just comes out of my mouth and my head. I'm like, hey, how did I remember that? But I've been in school forever, guys. Probably over 40 years already. I've been in school since I was 4. So there's going to be 10 brain retention, okay? The first one is called encoding. This is the process of memory begins with encoding. This is our sensory information that's converted into a format that our brain can store. Think of it as like your cup. And the more water that you put in there, the more that it grows and grows. But it's kind of invisible because it's clear, but it's there, right? It begins with encoding, converting it to a format that we store in our brain. And this involves transformation of sensory input. What does that mean, CJ? Visual, whatever you see, auditory, whatever you hear, tactile, stimuli, whatever you touch, into neural codes that can be processed, okay, and then stored so you can actually recall it. So how do you encode? Meaning, how do you even put information in there? By reading, by talking, by listening. How do you recall it? Well, let's talk about storage. That's the second one in brain retention. Once information is encoded in our brain, it is stored in various regions of your brain. That's why sometimes you can't recall a lot of things, because some of us are storing our long-term memory better than our short-term memory. Some of us have short-term memory better than long-term memory, right? Different types of memories are thought to be stored in different areas. For example, short-term memories are believed to be stored in the prefrontal cortex. Okay, that means while long-term memories distributed differently in your brain regions, including in your hippocampus. I know this is more of a scientific, not that you want to be a neuroscientist today. Hippocampus and cortical areas. Remember, this is academic now, so I have to tell you those things. Now, that is the storage phase. The third one is consolidation. After you encode it, you store it. Now let's consolidate, right? Memories are initially fragile and they're vulnerable to disruption. So through a process called consolidation, memories then becomes more stable and resistant to interference. This means that the process involves the strengthening of your neural connections through your repeated activation of the same pathways. What does that mean in plain English? It means that once you put something in your head, the information is stored. You're putting it together to consolidate, to make something out of it so that next time you're doing things again, you can retrieve it. And that is the fourth brain retention, retrieval. This is the process where accessing and bringing stored information back to your conscious awareness. This involves reactivating your neural pathways that were formed during encoding. Now, successful retrieval depends on the cues or prompts that help reactivate your associated memories. So let me put that in day-to-day activities. So let's say, for example, that I want to learn how to use Canva because I'm a business owner and everyone seems to be doing Canva. I learn something, I watch YouTube or I watch my friends do it and give me an idea. So now it's in my brain. I know how to do Canva. I know how to open. I know, where the elements are, how to upload, things like that, right? Now, your brain, while you're storing all that information, is processing it. It's consolidating it, right? And then it's time to perform. Now you learn all of that. CJ taught you, Nicole taught you, Sia taught you. And you're like, oh, I need to do my own graphics now, right? So you encode, you stored it, and you consolidate it. Now it's time to retrieve it. And how do you do it? By doing it. By doing it. And how you're doing it is through your memory. It's neurotransmitters is my fifth one. Chemical messengers known as neurotransmitters play a crucial role in our memory formation and retention. For instance, neurotransmitters like dopamine are involved in reinforcing rewarding experiences, making those memories more likely to be retained. That means every time that you do something like, oh, wow, I can do graphics. Oh, wow, I'm adding this beautiful thing. I remember CJ putting it in there and I can move audio, right? That little happiness that you get, dopamine, right? That is your reward, right? That is your neurotransmitter saying, good job, without anyone telling you, good job. The sixth one is synaptic plasticity. Synaptic plasticity. That is memory formation closely tied to your synaptic plasticity. This is your ability to basically connect between one neuron to the other. And that means it's to strengthen or weaken based on the patterns of activity. What does that mean, CJ? That means that the more you do things, the long-term potential, it's called potentiation, it's called LTP, and the long-term depression, which is LTD, are process associated with weakening or strengthening your synapses, so that the more that you believe that's in there for your learning memory, the more you do it, the more it will stay in your storage. Now, I'm going to go a little bit the non-scientific one, which is sleep. People ask me, do you sleep? I'm like, yeah, I can only sleep 4 hours. I tried sleeping over 5. I talked to Christine about this, and I get a migraine. And my migraine is not like, oh, I just have a little headache. My migraine sometimes makes me end up in the ER. It gets bad. So I know my habit. So I sleep 8 hours a day. But what I do is I sleep through the night for 4 hours. And then in between during my day, I take a nap. So if you call me, you message me, and you're like, where the heck is CJ? I just saw her post something and now she's not picking up my call. I'm probably taking a nap, guys. And the post that you see is sometimes preloaded. Okay. So I'm sleeping because sleep plays a vital role in your memory consolidation. They have a study that people who have Alzheimer's and things like that, they were sleep deprived for a long time. So during sleep, what happens with our brain is that it processes and integrates newly acquired information, transferring it from short-term to long-term memory storage, and it slows the wave in sleep and rapid-eye movement. And this is called REM sleep, rapid eye movement. This contributes to different aspects of your memory consolidation. This is, like deep sleep. Now, the eighth one of brain retention is emotional significance. Emotional significance, not emotional intelligence. That's for the brain function. That's something else. But this one is brain retention, emotional significance. Emotionally significant experiences that we have tend to better be remembered. Okay, it's called the amygdala. Amygdala, a brain region involved in processing emotions, interactions with memory systems, so that it enhances the storage and retrieval of your emotionally charged memories. Anything that is so sad, anything that is so significant in your pivoting, in my podcast, I always ask you, what are the significant timeline of your 20 years? You're talking 20 years. There's so many things happening in a day. but I'm only asking for significant. I'm actually looking at what your brain functions that you can remember that's significant in that 20 years. So when I ask that, guess what? Your emotional significance is that basically that specific memory that you've had is lasting in your brain because you encoded it, you stored it, you consolidated it. Now it's time to retrieve it. And your neurotransmitters, right? Your dopamine is giving you either a happiness or a sadness. Now your synaptic plasticity, right? Basically your long-term potentiation and long-term depression is kicking in. And if you are lack of sleep, some of those memories goes away. Your emotional significance, that means right we are talking about right now, is your amygdala in your brain region is now processing what is that emotions that gives you that oomph that you can remember that, right? Usually we remember a lot of our trauma because that is encoding in our brain. Now the ninth one is called spaced repetition. Spacing effect suggests that information is better retained when it is studied over spaced intervals rather than in a single session. So for those of you who are crammers out there, studies, you're like, I do good when I cram. I do too. But here's the thing. After that, your brain is actually, you're trying to expand your brain for that one moment. And notice that when you cram something in your brain, after that, you need a nap because you're so tired physically. Because you literally crashing your brain at that moment, right? You're crashing. You can't. It is okay. Most people will get more tired using their brain than physical activity. When you exercise, you don't want to take a nap. You actually want to do a marathon because your body, your blood flow, your brain function, everything is just invigorated, right? Your blood flow is there. Your oxygen level is high and you have energy when you exercise, right? But if you think you're studying, you're working hard, you're, moving things on your Excel and your PowerPoint and your Canva, and then after you're like, I need a nap. You know why you said that? It's because your brain is charged up. You are maximizing that storage level and retrieval, and your neurotransmitters, your dopamine, it's like giving you a middle finger. Dude, stop. I'm overwhelmed. And that's why your brain and your body is saying, hey, stop, take a nap. And when you say you take a nap, that's number 7. Remember, memory consolidation. During that, you have your REM sleep, right? Remember that. So the 10th one is called mnemonic devices. It's spelled Mnemonic, mnemonic devices. Mnemonic devices are memory aids that use in association, visualization, patterns to help encode and retrieve information. By the way, I gave you a mnemonic example, the SMART goal, that is mnemonic. You know what that means in plain English? It means that when I say SMART goals, you know exactly what I mean because we define what SMART goals were, right? We defined what SMART goals were. Mnemonic is all those visualization. Or how about the math geeks that are listening to this, even if in team replay? How many of you guys give me a thumbs up or a heart emoji? Remember math of PEMDAS. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, right? You know that what? Parentheses is first to solving the problem. Exponential, multiplication, division, addition, and then subtraction. That is the process. And that's during high school. Hello, I'm on my 5th degree and I still remember that because it is mnemonic, right? It is associated with patterns. They leverage our brain's ability to remember vivid and unique images or connections. Okay, so I'm going to stop the lecture there. Hi, Oliver. Thank you so much for that. Do you guys have any questions? Any questions? Any questions before I move on? No questions. Okay. If you have questions, take your hands up and I will definitely do that. Christine is here. So I'm going to do one more. This is taking a break, right? Then this is my fifth introduction to study habits. Incorporating regular breaks during your study sessions. That means short breaks can help prevent burnout and also improve concentration. So I'm going to stop there and I'm going to bring anybody who wants to come up and raise your hands if you have mnemonics or study habits that you'd like to add. Oliver, welcome. Come on up, brother.
Thank you. No question, no things to add, just hello and feel free to share this session because there are so much amazingness. So, by instance, welcome Dylan for joining and feel free to raise your hand. So I'm really happy to listen to amazing information. And as I said, there is we in wisdom. So there is not only your brain, there is also six other brains in there. So that's amazing. Five other brains.
Christine is, if you guys have not connected with my sister Christine, she is a K to 12 teacher. She's been teaching for 30 years. 30 years. So, yes. And my sister Nicole, she has a full time job, but she has an amazing business on graphic design. So, if you want to connect with her, feel free. Christine, sister, welcome.
Hi, Constance. First of all, I wanted to thank you. There's some things that I didn't even know, and about the brain and how it works. And so I was curious to find out, probably in one of your studies, which one did you learn that much about the brain and how it works?
Um, yeah, so I took a class from a number one. She was a number one. I think she still is. Professor from Johns Hopkins, and her specialty is neurons in the brain and the brain function. She has studied it for, I think she said 20 years. She's a neurosurgeon. She basically cut brains up for a
Okay.
living, and she studied so much. So I was trying to teach neuromarketing and how marketing and the brain function works. And out of that 12 weeks, it was a 12 weeks course. Um, the whole thing that we basically looked at, and she said it's just about the pattern and how much we can handle for our brain function and the things that you can do to maximize your capacity every single day and every single week and repeat it again. And then all those patterns that you have actually creates a habit in your brain. So those are the studies that I actually had with her in terms of the classes, because she's the one who studied the brain and cut the brain up and thousands of people. I'm like, oh, I will never do that in my lifetime for sure. But so that's why we collaborate with people who are experts in their field.
Right. Yeah. I was very impressed. It was interesting listening to listening to all the technical terms and that kind of thing. Um, I do my master's in special ed, so you do talk about the brain, but not nearly as in much detail as what you did. But I do have some study tips that I've used myself personally, and then also as optimizing the time of day that you are able to get the most information out. So when I am writing my books or I'm trying to do as much cognitive work as possible, I wake up really early in the morning because I know I'm an early riser. So, and my brain is thinking the best. I'm problem solving. I'm just quicker. By the end of the afternoon, I know that that is not my optimal time. So I don't want to go ahead and try to bring like a real heady kind of work in. So it would be more like review or just, maybe like catching up and doing some like that kind of thing, just looking at my calendar. Um, so when I was growing up, I had a hard time with keeping things going from my short term memory to my long term memory. I had a very hard high school. We were number one in the state, and we lived on the East Coast. The East Coast is pretty well known. I mean, you have Harvard, you have Yale, so those were the places where a lot of our student body was going. So the classes were harder than some of even my master classes in college. So what I did is I would listen to myself. I would tape myself. So and then I would answer the questions, and then I would check it to see how I was doing based off of that audio. And I would play the audio all the time so I could get it stuck into my brain. So that way I could remember it easier too. And then, like you said, I would have somebody ask me the questions, and then I would explain it and try to be able to apply that information. So those were just some of the things that I can think of, and I got one of those tips from my sister because she would always say, "Okay, I'm ready to study now," and then she would say, "Okay, quiz me," and I would quiz her. Then she would go back in and just work on the ones that she needed help with.
Yes, those are great tip habits. Now I'm remembering, like, when you're in a group or in high school or in college or in a group session, you're like, how do we study for the exam? Oh my God, this is like a long exam. There's like 200 questions. I feel like I'm doing LSAT or, MCAT. But those are great study habits, like to quiz somebody. But that's the thing is if you don't build a community, it's hard to bounce ideas on people you don't know. You know what I mean? Like, you're taking a lot of my time. What are you trying to say? What about creating a schedule? How do you create schedule? I know you said, mornings is better for you because your brain functions is like alert. And then the afternoon, you're like, oh, it's because you're maximizing your brain at that point.
So my schedule, during the school year, it's really challenging. So I'll tell you what my schedule is, and I have a hard time fitting it all in. So I wake up at 4:45 in the morning, and I spend about 45 minutes working. I get my coffee, and then wake up, and so I'm ready to go at 5. And then I am working until probably about 6 o'clock, 5:45, and then I get my shower, and then I have to be out the door at 6:30 in the morning. I don't get off of work until 3:30. 3:30 by the time I get home, it's 4:30, you have dinner. And then, you spend time with your family. So by the time that I get any more like time after that, it's about 7, 8. And so then I get another hustle on from 8 o'clock until about 11 o'clock. So it's a pretty rigorous schedule once I go back to school.
Wow.
So
that's the same. Now, do you actually have any type of breaks in between 6:30 to 3:30, or you're just hustling?
So I have a half an hour for lunch, and it's not really a lunch. So I'm like running, I'm eating, answering emails as much as I can, trying to take some deep breaths and calming breaths because I teach little children. And then I have a plan period for 45 minutes, but you're still hustling. I'm calling parents. I might have some behavioral issues and those kinds of things. And so I'm pretty much, I don't have a lot of time during my day.
Wow.
So we're called in for meetings too during that 45-minute time period. So your time management is essential.
Yeah, I'm going to have a series on that, on time management for sure. And I think, when they talk about work-life balance, it's hard to balance when you're bouncing everywhere, but at the same time, it's our choice, right? Everything that we do is a choice. And so it's just a matter of like asking yourself two questions. Is what I'm doing an opportunity or is it a limitation, right? And there's always limitations on everything, and there's always an opportunity to everything. But number one thing that you guys have to remember, and I learned this the hard way, I had developed an ulcer twice, actually, a bleeding one, and I had to get surgery. Well, I didn't get surgery, but I had medication for a year because when I was in college, I don't know, okay, most of full-time is 12 units. That's a full-time college, right? 12 units per term. I did 24.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And I had to get the president of the school to actually approve it to make sure that, first of all, the money's there. And second of all, that I can handle it. Because when I had 24 units, I had work full time. I worked for Geico full time as a manager while I was going to school for 24 units. And remember, guys, each class is 3 units. And my classes were statistics and IT because I was trying to do software engineering while I was trying to please my dad on software engineering. And I was really loving communications. I had business communications, but business communications had a lot of research on psychology and also business way of doing things when it comes to emotions. And I think that's where my passion for helping others really shine when I did my communications, and I loved that class. But I also wanted to please my dad, saying, hey, I think you're good at computers, so I think you should do software engineering. So at that time, none of my family members, none of everyone in the female gender do any computers because they're like, oh my God, it's too much. But I was good at it. I was taking computers apart. I was helping my friends, and I was charging people, but it wasn't like major money, but I was good at it. So my dad's like, you should just do computer software engineering. Well, I didn't eat. I don't eat. I just drink either coffee all the time or the what do you call those, like monster drinks. And so I did that for a year and I ended up in the hospital. And then when I was hospitalized, they're like, you have 3 holes in your intestines, right? Like you're bleeding. And this is why you're having this issue. I was like, oh, okay. So what do I do now? And they're like, quit having 24 units, go back to like normal people. I have 12 units. And then, don't work too hard. I'm like, dude, I feed myself. I have to work full time. And so I work full time, and my schedule changed from, I used to also work overnight. I work from 2 in the morning or 3 in the morning all the way to the next day.
Wow.
Yeah, I hustled. But I said I worked 24 hours because I've done all 24. Geico's open 24 hours. So I worked 24 hours scheduled. So like one schedule would be, normal 8 to 5. I did 5:30 when I was pregnant. My husband made me quit after 6 months of pregnancy because I had 100 employees and I would be there. Opening is 5:30. I would be there at 5 in the morning pregnant. And so he's like, no. And I stay from 5 to 5 and I wake up at 4 and he's like, no. And I almost lost my first child because of that. So the doctor's like, you got to quit your work. And I was a workaholic. So my husband's like, yeah, if you want to keep this child of ours, you need to quit work. So that's when 6 months, I quit my job because I would lose my baby if I didn't quit my job.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I have horror stories. Yeah.
We have some similarities. You're way over what I did, but I did 18 credit hours. And then I was also an RA and I was also in a sorority. So those all were pretty time consuming. Plus we did philanthropic volunteerism and that kind of thing when I was in college. And those 18 credit hours, that was quite a bit to take on in addition to being an RA, because I had to tie a lot of time with that. And I think that's where I figured out that I worked best in the morning. So I did my time management. So nobody was open around when I was an RA. So it was like 8 o'clock in the morning. So I was like, heck, I'm going to take that shift because I can study and I work best during that time. Other people were taking the male shift. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Why would you choose a male shift? Because now you have to do all of this extra work. Not that I'm lazy, but I'm thinking smarter and not harder. How can you, have I can get paid and study at the same time? Who wouldn't want to be able to do that and then to answer the phones every once in a while, as opposed to like running around with your head cut off and answering like a lot of questions.
Oh, yeah. That's a lot. I used to be a PBX operator. Imagine those 1950s women that they stick there. I did that. I would get like hundreds of calls because I was in high school and I was in college while I was in high school. So basically I graduated junior year of with my high school. I worked full time at that time. It's like 30 hours for high school students. And I was an assistant to the vice president of the owner of the bank. But they had one lady quit on them for the PBX. And I know why, because they get harassment, they get people yelling at them. And, I was like, oh, hold on one second. I literally just, put the calls, but it was overwhelming. There were so many buttons, like 100 buttons. Like, oh gosh, I hope I transfer that person the right way. Because I was like 17, but that was really fun trying to do that. So I think you and I definitely have a lot in common in terms of like juggling things. But is it really a good thing? No, it's not. But we still do it as an adult. But now we're just more intentional. Whatever we don't need, we don't do.
The one thing that I figured out with myself, so we have this in common as well, is that we're both global thinkers. So what that's enabled me to do is to think at a higher level where I don't get so caught up in all of the gossip, all of the office politics. So I have a higher purpose. So I make sure that I'm protected, like mentally protected, because that it kind of protects you from all that little stuff. Like, is your boss in a bad mood? I don't care if my boss is in a bad mood, it's not because of me, it's because he's in a bad mood or they're in a bad mood. So you don't take on other people's feelings and that kind of thing. So I think that's enabled me to, when I get home like at 8 o'clock to 11 o'clock, it's enabled me to continue to work and not be so run down emotionally and all of that.
I agree. I think like yesterday I needed a nap. Like literally I went out with my family at 8 at night they wanted to have this excursion for like an hour away for dinner. It's like this town where everything stayed in the 1950s. Like, it's so cute. No, I'm serious. Like, even the building, my husband grew up in here. And so he's born in San Diego. And he's like, yeah, we just get a Foster's freeze. It's like, back in the 50s. My kids, I swear to you, they're old soul. My other one, she loves rock and roll. And she loves and then the other one loves Elvis, like in love with Elvis. And she loves the blues in the 30s. They sing it. And they sing well. I mean, well. And they do art. And I was like, and I gave birth to you guys? And that's what I'm so grateful. Like, I'm not deserving of a mother this way, it's so amazing. But like, I literally went to bed. My husband took me, went to bed in the car, and then they ate dinner. They were like, Mom, do you want to come? I'm like, no. And then I fell yesterday, actually, then from my chair, and I hit my head on the table. And then that wasn't enough. My phone dropped on my head in the same space that I got hit on. So I thought maybe I had concussion. I'm like, well, I wake up with my brain today. I think I'm okay. But really our brain, when I don't know if you guys know, but when you are into an accident, like major car accident or anything like that, and you lose consciousness, what it does is that your brain actually is trying to prevent you from losing your memory, period. So it goes into this shell. Like, think of it as like a snail. When you put salt, you're being mean to the snail. I see kids do that, and they kind of retrieve inside their shell. That's what your brain does. It's trying to protect it from losing its memory. It's really amazing. Like, I saw it physically when this lady was telling us. It was such an expensive class, by the way. I couldn't afford it, but I was teaching a class, so they had to put me in there, and it's so amazing. And sometimes I take classes at Harvard or MIT or all of these big universities I have access to because I wanted to learn more, and I have friends in the community. So all the things that I'm giving you, it's not coming from my what. It's actually coming from people who are there. So I take classes from MIT. Like I said, I do instructional design from MIT managers who are huge on instructional design, because teaching, what I find fascinating is so many coaches out there, but they've never taught. And they're like, I can coach you and I can teach you. And it's good that people want to share the information, but I think it takes away the process and also gives bad reputation to people who are doing good, because some teachers are really good at teaching, but then what happens is you get someone who think they can teach, they get a bad reputation, and then people are like, wow, you all suck as teachers, right? Yeah. I mean, I hate that. Um,
It,
mm,
it's you can be really smart in this subject, but it takes somebody that has good people sense to be able to teach it and to look at the student and know if they're picking it up or not. So you're just looking for the idiosyncrasies. I always look for children's or students' baselines, even adults, because adult learners and children are not that far apart. I know that there's adult theory um, for for coaching and that kind of thing, and I've also done some of the classes and that kind of thing. But when it comes down to it, people are people. So I can tell if somebody's getting it or not. You can tell clearly on their face. And if they're not getting it within the first couple of minutes, I'm redoing it and making sure that they understand what I'm saying. So I think that's definitely important.
yeah. How about part of the study habits that I looked at is called spaced repetition, like basically reviewing, revisiting the material at spaced intervals over time. I know for sure kids do that because I used to teach K to 12. What kind of techniques? Because this one is actually to enhance long term retention, right? By spacing out the material. What kind of things do you use in the K to 12 sector?
So I do a lot with, like you said, with repetition. So we do it in a lot of different ways with a kinesthetic approach, where they have some of it's hands-on, some of it's like pointing, some of it they're dancing and then moving. And then I do things one-on-one, I do things in small group, we do things in whole group. And if the children are not getting it, I have an aide, which I'm very fortunate to have, and then they'll pull back. So if we see children that aren't engaged, then we'll engage them and bring them into a small group setting. One thing I found with adult learners is when I'm coaching them, I videotape them because it's a very powerful tool. So you can sit next to somebody and you can say, this is what I noticed. Well, as soon as you say they're not noticing it. So you are dispensing all the information. When you have a video, you are it's on an equal playing level. So we watch the video together and we're taking a look for maybe like classroom management. Well, when you're looking at the video, I'm not looking to say, hey, this is where you messed up, but we're looking at, let's say in classroom management, and they don't have very good classroom management to start off with, and all of a sudden something happens, and then the children start listening. Well, what was that point that the children started to respond? So that part is played over and over and over and over and over again until they can begin that next lesson with that. So it actually speeds up some of the learning for your coaching, because then you can hit a couple of areas. So then you could hit the classroom management, then you could also hit content delivery. So I was able to hit two things where usually, like if it comes from like your anecdotal records, you're just hitting one thing, and it's one thing, it's not even very, it's just coming from your viewpoint, and there's not a clear understanding of how to change their delivery.
Yeah, and I love that you can actually go back to the conversation and look at all the visual aids. Especially, that's why I'm trying to teach too. Like a lot of people are unaware of the learning styles, and people are like, I learned this way differently and da 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 differently. And I'm glad that people know what they're learning, but without concrete evidence of yourself of what your learning styles are, you kind of just guess. This is how I learn best, which is great because that's from experience. But I think knowing the foundation of what your learning style is and knowing the strengths and weaknesses of that specific learning style gives you a better boost, an idea of productivity. because now you're focusing on what your strengths are, not trying to second guess that this could be it or that could be it. It's like going to an ocean and you have no compass of where you're going, and it's just a vast, like huge water, and you're like, where am I going? Right? That's literally what you're doing in an ocean. Like if you don't have navigation, you don't have anything, you don't know where you're going. The same thing for your learning style. If you kind of guess, oh, I'm kind of this or I'm kind of that, you don't really know what your strengths and weaknesses are. That's the first thing I do when I teach is let's have a quiz. Let's find out what your learning style is. And they're like, why? It's because when you know yourself, you can leverage better on what your strengths and weaknesses are, and then focus on those weaknesses to become your strength so you can find opportunities, and then focus on your threats to make it into a non-threat area, like a SWOT analysis, right? And make it into an opportunity to become a strength. We should always continuously improve, especially if you're a business owner, right? You need to continue to do that, but without learning how do you learn, right? Most people will do auditory. Most people will do a hybrid of auditory and visual. Most people will do kinesthetic. I know I took a test several times. I'm kinesthetic and visual. I can hear, I can listen, but I learn better when I'm doing things and I'm seeing it. That's why YouTube is perfect for me, for sure.
Yeah. I have to definitely, I can't just see it. I have to actually do it alongside of it. So then that way I can retain it. I can watch a video, but unless if I start doing it, I'll have to go back and I'll have to refer to that video. It's almost like a split screen. So I do know that about myself.
Okay.
So which is good to know. And also I teach my students to advocate for themselves. And I teach kindergarten students, but my kindergarten students can tell me I need to learn in a different way. This isn't working for me. So then what I do with them is I said, okay, let's go ahead and go take a look at your data, because I keep data, and I teach my kindergarten students how to look at their data. And then we see if what they're feeling is legitimate, and then we take a look at their growth rate. And so we take a look and then we problem solve it together. Does it look like you are, that you're making gains or not? And we compare, and I cover up the other children's names, but then we look at some of the other children. They're like, no, I need to be taught in a different way. I'm like, okay, so let's try this. What do you think you need to do to learn better? And they would tell me, and then I'd say, okay, let's try it like that. And then we'll revisit it in a week. And then we revisit it, and then I'll do a recheck to see if it improved or not. So I think also making sure that we give students, or even people that we work with, teaching them how to be able to self-evaluate and to be able to self-advocate for themselves.
Oh, I love that. And I cannot wait for your kindergartners to be an adult. Like, oh my God, Teacher Jones, you're so amazing. Like, first of all, I grew up in the Philippines and our teachers were none. And if you speak, you breathe, you ask, you will get eraser in your face. Okay. You get thrown crap at your face. We have rules everywhere. Your earrings has to be a stud. Your shoes has to be black Mary Janes. Your socks has to be white and no ruffles. Your uniform has to be this length. Your tie has to be this way. Like, I mean, the rules just goes on, okay? And I went wild child when I came to the U.S., but that's what happens when you're like so many rules. And I think that's just so amazing because most of us will be told, you're going to learn, you're going to sit, and you're going to listen. Right. And each one of us comes from different thing in our brain. We just come that way. And you're trying to push and shove all of these kids to learn one way when in reality, they're not. And so you see a lot of kids that are academically inept, not because they're stupid or dumb or they have some mental issues. Like most people will do that. It's because they don't know their learning style. And the teachers don't know and don't have the support to teach them the learning style. And so when I teach, I have one kid that has ADHD and he gets up and he tries to like throw and, so what I give him to sit down is a bouncy ball. Those yoga, big, huge. Yeah. I put him in a bouncy ball. I said, hey, if you learn by bouncing, it's fine. And I put him in the back so that he doesn't, obviously it's not him in the front because then all the kids would be like looking at him bouncing.
Yeah, I want
Yes.
to.
Yeah. So I put him in the back and he has, a special chair so he could bounce. And then he went from F to an A in like a term.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I do stuff like that. Sometimes I can see that they're getting antsy, and I'll go over and do jumping jacks with them, or doing push-ups. So I'm right there with the students, so they don't feel like they're like ostracized. I'll say, "Hey, you want to go do this?" And we'll go take a brain break, or pushing up against a wall, or something like that. Allowing them to stand, to move around a little bit, giving them special assignments to do. Maybe like some heavy lifting, and going to take them books to the library because that helps calm your system down. I tell them why they're doing it. You're taking a break because I can see that you know that you need to take a break before this happens, so that way they can start to feel it in their body. And you're going to go take books to the library because that'll help calm your system down. When you carry something heavy, it helps calm your whole body down. Go take those books back. When you come back, tell me if it's helped or hasn't, and if it hasn't, we'll come up with another strategy. So I think it's helpful to have, when you're teaching, to have it where your students, like I said before, they can advocate for themselves.
Yeah, and I love that idea. Well, thank you so much for your addition. I know I could count on you. And said a teacher, I wish you were up here because I know you're teach also, and I would love to hear, your techniques and study habits for your students because we wanted to give support not just for teachers but really business owners because we're adults, but honestly our brain is also there. Like I have so much to even look at how to retain information expansion. So to end this, I'm going to give you some information. Like for example, there's have you heard of the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve? Have you heard of that?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so his name was like Hermann Ebbinghaus. He's a German physiologist. He formulated a thing called forgetting curve, and it basically shows how quickly we forget newly learned information without reviewing. So he had done, according to his research, the first hour after learning, we forget 50% of that information. And then within 24 hours, this retention drops around 30%. And then after a week, it can even decrease about 20%. So think about that for a minute. If you don't repeat your information that you learn, the first hour, you lost 50. In 24 hours, you lost 30. In a week, 20. So after a week, what do you think? It goes to zero. Yeah. So what I want to tell you is make sure you guys keep on learning. Oliver, let's go. Let's end this, brother. What's up? Come on up.
Thank you. First, thank you so much for this wealth of information, and you are warming my heart. Not only because you shared some personal stuff, and my heart is with you about what you are lived, each of you, but also about the fact that I would like to participate to make this world a better place. I'm not a teacher at school. I'm a new language coach, and at the same time, I'm really resonating with what was said about the habit, about also letting processing, because it breaks my heart to see children right now having to face the same than 20 years ago or 30 years ago, like being having goose brains, like retaining the most information possible, and then what is the point? That's that's really losing time for children, for teachers, and also uh, losing joy. And so I really I'm really encouraging collaborations. Don't try to be to climb the tree as a superfish. Do the best that you can with joy, with your heart. And that's why I was really attracted to new language coach, because it's applying the neuroscience through coaching. So thank you so much, Dr. Constance, and thank you so much, Christine. And And yeah, I'm really happy to thrive with the new world and bringing more joy and more heart, because there is not only the brain in the head, there are brains, two other brains like the heart and the gut, and we need to involve all the two others in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Oliver. And by the way, sis, Oliver is in our invite only club. He's amazing. He's on there. Yuki. Yes, he's there. So I love that. So I'm trying to create a support team, guys, for entrepreneurs and teachers out there. If I have not Zoomed with you, you are not going to be invited in our club because I want to make sure that everyone who's on there is a real person. I've had some experiences in the past that's not real. So I want to make sure that I'm protected. I'm protecting everyone in our team. I also want you guys to invite people in our club. Just give me a heads up on who they are so I can Zoom with them. If you have ideas like, hey, I want to invite this person, send them my way. We want to grow. And if you have a business, put it on the business directory that we have. I'm open. Like if you want to sell a course, if you want to sell your business, you want to sell a book, I don't care. That's our space. But that's the reason why I want to protect our space, that everyone is a real person, wanting to learn, wanting to help, and wanting to build a community, because I want to build a community for the future that we are all in it together. But we don't want no negative Nelly either. Okay, so that's what we're trying to filter. Thank you guys so much for your time today. I respect your time. We are 2 minutes late already, but I love you. I will see you guys and talk to you next Thursday on this series. Bye, everybody. See ya.
Bye. Thank you.